or the speakers, what gives the music to the people, was still on a truck 2 days ago. Clean slate. We come in here and in about 6 hours they assemble and suspend the lights. All the stuff is on electric motors and suspended in the air. And when the lighting is up and the speakers are up, we get out our risers or the platforms that the band gear is on, set up our risers and fill them up, bring guitar amplifiers and instruments in, and in about 6 hours time we're ready to go. Last night we had a sold-out house, a little over 2,000 people. We're having a good time out there, and we'll have the same again tonight. And when it's over and done with tonight, about 40 of us will converge on this thing, put it all back in boxes with wheels, roll it onto 3 trucks on the loading dock out here. And on Monday, we'll be at the fabulous Fox Theater in Atlanta. Very excited about that. One more time, I'm Gary. I've been working with Mr. Ortiz for about 20 years to set up his stuff specifically. Percussion, basic percussion on the riser, congas, bongos, timbales, a lot of cymbals, and a lot of this handheld stuff that we'll let you guys get your hands on it. And this is my main man, Mr. Ortiz.
All right. Thank you, Gary, very much.
Yeah.
Yay. All right. You know, like Gary said, you know, it takes a lot of folks to run this little band that we call Widespread Panic. And as probably Gary mentioned, you know, we've been doing this now for 25 years. That's one of the reasons why we're here celebrating for the next 2 days here in Athens. And believe it or not, Miss Chris Moore here has been a fan all those 25 years, if you can believe that. So that's saying a lot about her, I guess, being consistent with our style of music, you know. And we play rock and roll, and as Gary probably mentioned, you know, I play percussion, and this is my riser right here with all my little toys that I have. And some of the toys that you might see up front, I'll get out of your way so that everybody can see. You know, the small bongos. 3 points over here. Bongos, congas, and assorted toys, cymbals, and cowbells. I'm not a complete expert of drums. I know there's a lot of other people that are probably more familiar with drums. I started playing drums in 1964, and the band that got me interested into playing drums was this group from England, Liverpool, England, called the Beatles. Does anybody know who the Beatles are? Has everybody? Good. So that band, and obviously since I'm a drummer, you know, my favorite person in the band was Ringo Starr. Yeah. So, pardon me? All right. Well, can you tell me, do you know, was Ringo the original drummer of the Beatles? Yes, ma'am. No, he wasn't. No. Do you know the name of the original drummer? Richard Starkey. That was his name. But at any rate, so the Beatles were the first ones that got me interested in music. And so as the years went on, I was fortunate enough to acquire a drum set, and I started playing drums. And by this time, I was probably 12 years old when I first started playing drums. And then it wasn't until 1971 that I started playing the hand drums. The hand drums, I called them, back then, at the time, the only thing that I could play was one rhythm at a time. And there's a multitude of rhythms. Now let's take a few steps back. The conga drums, or the drums, you know, originally started in Africa. millions and millions of years ago. And even here, you know, back millions and millions of years ago, you know, people, cavemen, we'll say, would sit around campfires or sit in caves or sit amongst the vegetation that was growing around them. And they would have to entertain themselves like we do now, but not so much like how we do now. But, you know, they had to have a form of communication, a form of relaxation, a form of just being together. Because, you know, back then, you know, there were no condominiums, there were no apartments. You know, you pretty much all lived together in one common area. So, you know, folks had to entertain themselves. That's how things were invented. The wheels, light, fire. And so you can only imagine that back then, cave people, I guess is the proper terminology, used to just bang on pieces of wood and started out, you know, just making noise. And then someone else might decide to play a different pattern. This is called a pattern. And maybe someone else might have picked up some rocks or something and maybe started a different pattern to play along with that pattern. Hey, Gary.
Yes, sir.
Can you play this pattern for me, please? So that we can kind of tell them. Just do. Da, 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 da. So that's what you call a pattern, is that one person does a pattern, and then another person does another pattern. And it doesn't really have to be in time, and probably you know what time is.
Thank goodness.
You know, you got a time. The time is kind of like your heartbeat. You know, a lot of people don't realize that they have time that's created by their heartbeat, by just, you know, and everybody has one. Everybody has one. They just got to feel it inside. Hear that little pulse. And so, you know, people probably made instruments, you know, out of anything they could find. And so back, no matter where you are, but a lot of the scientists say that drums originated in Africa, and then they moved from Africa to the West Indies, which is, I guess, considered where Cuba is. Does everybody know where Cuba is? And then it made its way towards the United States. That's how the theory goes, and it's all a theory. You know, no one has really written down and said, okay, this is the way it happened. All right, and back when you're sitting around a campfire, remember back then, you know, they would go out and seek food to provide for themselves, whether it be water buffalo, and of course, you know, there was lizards, there probably were lots of, maybe not goats, mastodons, something that would provide them with food, shelter. And that's usually from the skin or the hide of the animal that they were using to provide for themselves, you know, to eat, to stay warm. So, you know, the folks back then were very inventive, as far as they were very innovative, I should say, as far as using the whole animal that they would capture. And one of the parts that they would use, obviously, you know, they would use the fur of the animal to stay warm, or they would use the fur of the animal to make clothes, you know, to really you know, clothe themselves. And then they decided, how they decided, I don't know, but they decided that with also the skin of the animal, they could put it around a piece of wood. And back then, they didn't have metal, so they used rope, lots of rope, to intertwine the drum head here. And this particular drum head is made out of goat skin. And you know, of course, goat skin doesn't have all the designs like this head does. But this particular skin is goat skin. And a little later on, when this clinic is over, you can come by and you can still see the hairs of the goat skin on this particular drum around the edges. But they would mount the drum head or the drum skin onto a piece of wood. And you know, the drums now come in different shapes, different sizes, and wood, as you know, if you get wood wet, it'll change color. So a lot of people, I would imagine, would probably try to coat it with water to have different different degrees of shade on the drum. And this particular drum is called a djembe, and it looks like an hourglass. And the djembe is an African American drum. This particular one was given to me by a friend, but I was very fortunate to go with a dance and drum company to Dakar, which is on the Ivory Coast, which is on the western side of Africa. To go to I was invited to go to a drum shop dance workshop to learn different rhythms, to play with other musicians, and to watch the different dances that go with different rhythms of the drums. But again, like I said, this is called a djembe, and it's a lot different shape. It's a different shape than the conventional conga drum. And you know, they both have different sounds. And like I said, remember, with this particular drum, the djembe, the way you tune or the way you look for a pitch of any drum is, on this particular one, you tighten all the different strings that are around this drum to tighten it, to make it a higher pitch. And then with the conga drum, it has a different tone, has a different pitch. And unlike most of these big amplifiers here that you see around us, there's not a volume knob on these drums. Like, this is the volume. How hard or how soft you hit the drum is how loud it's going to project. So if you hit them soft,